We'll go around the table. I'm Mark Kraft,
Are you
County
starting?
Commissioner. Yes.
No, you were off the record. I appreciate you
We
starting.
call the meeting to order. It's 1:34. I'm Mark Kraft, County
12:31.
Commissioner. 12:31. 4. I'm Mark Kraft, County Commissioner.
Claire Duda, County Board.
Kent Holm, Director of Environmental Services.
Diane Carlson, Deputy County Administration.
Constance Meyerndorf, Clerk's Office.
E.J. Morgan, County Commissioner.
And Kent, you're on.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners. I'm going to walk you through a number of different items. We're going to start off with everyone's favorite trash and solid waste. So with that, just an update on State Street landfill. We did just recently in this past year go through an updated renewal of our post-closure permit through, and that's both a joint effort with NDEQ, Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality, and federal EPA. And one of the things that got resolved to the county's benefit, and this is working, Brian Norton in our office, our environmental compliance manager, and Joe Lorenz, fiscal administrator, were able to negotiate a better situation in terms of the financial assurance measures that are called for in the permit. We basically have a couple of different things. A trust agreement that covers post-closure care costs, and that's kind of the normal types of actions to the land, making sure the cover cap is intact and so on. And then corrective action piece of this, that is for other things that we don't necessarily foresee at this point, but that the feds are requiring. And we were able to change that from a trust agreement standpoint to a local government financial test, which basically allows us to use the county's good credit rating to be able to provide financial assurance. And that means we don't have a lot of money just sitting and tied up in a trust agreement. So that's a beneficial thing for the county. We still continuing with the landfill gas beneficial use project with Bioresources Development, or BRD. The picture on the left is actually the flare station as it was constructed at the State Street facility. And the photo on the right is not the actual plant there, but this is just a kind of a stock photo of what kind of the conversion and cleaning plants typically kind of looks like. Number of tanks and various other processes that they use there, and that they're putting that processed, cleaned and processed gas into the MED pipeline system. So that's continuing, and that appears to be going pretty well.
And may I stop?
Yep.
Commissioner Chris Rogers and Patrick Bloomingdale have come in. Okay, go on.
Okay. Shifting from that, now talk just really in general about solid waste management issues that are kind of on the forefront right now. Talked a little bit about in the county board meeting the waste reduction fund with the state through DEQ and some of the impacts to that as regards under the sink, and I'm going to come back and touch on that in just a bit. Back in 2012, we updated the Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan for the metro region, and this was really a joint effort between MAPA, Sarpy, Douglas County, and City of Omaha. We used environmental trust funds, grant funds to fund that update. One of the things that plan pointed out was we needed to implement what the plan was calling a source reduction leader to really get at the key component of the state's Integrated Solid Waste Management Act, and that is that from a priority standpoint, it's always best to not create the waste in the first place so that you don't have to deal with it. So in the Solid Waste Management Act at Nebraska, which was passed back in the early 90s, which actually set up the framework for the local plan, it talks about as basic state policy that we should strive to have volume reduction at the source. And so that whole, and this whole triangle is commonly referred to as a waste hierarchy, that you should try to do as much volume reduction as possible. What you can't keep from becoming waste, then you should try to recycle and reuse as much as possible, including taking the organic waste and composting it and so on. And then finally, land disposing, and then incinerating or doing some of the other things with incineration. So all that coming into play, we have a couple of different efforts. The Integrated Solid Waste Management Task Force, which is also called out in the plan. Commissioner Kraft has been sitting in on those meetings, which are held quarterly. But the Heartland 2050 effort, which got going a couple of years ago, has a Natural Resources Committee component to it. And out of that Natural Resources Committee, there are various subgroups that work on some of the different strategies there. And one of the subgroups is the Solid Waste Working Group. And coincidentally, a lot of the strategies really kind of mesh very well with what's in the Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan. And so basically taking the initiative to kind of merge those two groups together so that we're talking in a common voice and we're not duplicating efforts there. So with that, one of the things that is a big component is education and outreach on solid waste, and primarily how do we identify what that number one priority in the solid waste hierarchy, and that is to not create the waste in the first place so that we don't have to spend resources dealing with it. So on March 16th, the Heartland 2050 Solid Waste Working Group is going to convene an event at UNO. We're going to utilize a collaborative electronic tool called Think Tank that UNO has. And we're hoping to bring in a wide variety of solid waste stakeholders. Already we've sent out about 70, 75 or so invitations that kind of cover these groups. What I would ask of all of you here in attendance today at this meeting is to let me know if there are people that you feel should be part of this. And I can tell you we have a wide number of folks who've already been invited that kind of fit in these different groups. And it's not just people who deal with trash directly. It's people like the Chamber of Commerce who are trying to attract businesses to the metropolitan area. More and more businesses now have a green footprint and a green corporate culture, and they want to be able to not throw things away and like that. So that's a reality that we have to live with. Environmental groups, government representatives, and then of course maybe the obvious ones, the folks who pick up your trash every week, people who compost, community groups such as neighborhood organizations and so on. So we'd like to get a good feel for how we ought to do education and outreach. And so these are some of the groups that we're targeting. One of the questions that we're going to ask is, well, how do we best get at this volume reduction piece? How should we be doing that, and what are the action items, and how should those be prioritized? Second one gets to this source reduction leader position, or is it not just one person? Is it maybe an organization, or are there several groups or organizations that ought to be involved? And here, Commissioner Kraft, this morning in the discussion, you brought up extension and the fact that they should be involved in some of the conversation with the grant and funding shift. They're very much a player in this particular, because we've identified extension as being a key component in terms of how we deal with yard waste, because the best way to deal with yard waste is not to create it in the first place. And then it's really a moot point. If we mulch grass and do some other thing, yeah, we're going to have an issue with leaves because we simply have that. But can we do it in a way that's better than what we have in the past? So, in terms of funding it, are there opportunities with the environmental trust? Are there opportunities with the Department of Environmental Quality through their grants and so on? And can we utilize extension? What's the role of local entities as well? So I mentioned just briefly this morning in the commissioners' meeting the solid waste program study that was authorized by the legislature in 2016. It looked at these 6 areas. They wanted to do an overall review of their programs, a need assessment, and so on. And they provided some analysis and some recommendations at the end. Well, one of the things that jumps out here is the fact that the $1.25 per ton fee that was established in the early 90s as part of that Integrated Solid Waste Management Act, which helps to fund the Department of Environmental Quality, their programs, and these grant funds, which we get to help fund the operational costs at Under the Sink. That $1.25 has never been adjusted. So the purchasing power of the $1.25 is roughly 77 cents right now. And that fund, as evidenced by the recent legislative actions or proposed actions, continues to be rated. And so that particular source of funds to be able to do things like Under the Sink or to do things like solid waste education and outreach are continually getting eroded. So the opportunity here is, can we go back? Can we identify legislatively that they need to increase this fund, or they need to increase the fee? So if, for example, and I throw this out just as an example for discussion purposes, if that fee were to go from $1.25 to $2.50, that's great. Continue to use the $1.25 portion of that for the things that you've been using it for. Take the additional $1.25 and start earmarking it for facilities operation and for solid waste education and outreach that helps to get to those key things that are in policy already, that have been in policy. This is the opportune time to do that because they've just completed that study. The legislature just got it mid-December. And so I think this is just one of those opportunities that we should take advantage of, and I would say work cooperatively with the city of Omaha, particularly Sarpy County, probably the city of Lincoln as well, because they're going to have the same issues. And collectively, I think we can hopefully make something, exercise some good changes here, and get some more dedicated funding for Under the Sink. But we won't have to go through a competitive grant process to get. We're already generating, as I mentioned this morning in the commissioners meeting, we're generating approximately 20% of the funds that are going in there now. So if we double the fee, still have that 20% going in statewide, to me it makes sense for us to try to get some dedicated funding out of this so that it's less of a guessing game. And it's the people who use the facility, the people who want to throw stuff away, that are helping to pay for that stuff, and we're not taxing the general public.
Claire?
You're right. I think it's been $1.25 about as long as I can remember. But who gets that money? Where does that go right now? How much does the state get? How much do we get?
The Department of Environmental Quality gets all of the $1.25, and then they split it up.
Don't be happy to let us know. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Okay, so they give a little bit of it back to us.
Yeah, they take it and it gets split. 50% of that fee goes to one program, and another 50% goes to this waste reduction program. DEQ is going to take off kind of an administrative portion of that to be able to administer all the stuff that they do. And the rest of it is all available through competitive grants. But there are other pieces of revenue that come into those funds as well that are not landfill related. The scrap tire thing, and then there's a business fee on businesses that deal with certain products. So, yes, the study itself, one of the recommendation was really silent on whether it ought to be increased, but I think it did recognize the fact that it has not been increased. But I think, again, there's an opportunity here to, okay, we have a study, this is the prime time to be able to put something together to move it forward into, to try to get some dedicated funding.
Mary Ann?
And how many years have we been going on?
From under the sink, I think it went online in 2003, I believe. So roughly 14 years. And the volume that's handled there continues to increase.
Is it?
And so we're looking at maybe an innovative way to use what's called extended producer responsibility, EPR. It's trying to get the paint manufacturers to take back unused paint, and that becomes just the cost of the paint. That becomes that whole, whoever produces the product, they have to share in the cost of recycling and doing something with it when it's no longer needed or wanted. So that's I don't know, it's a relatively new concept, but that's a concept that seems to be gaining momentum around the country in different places. And there are a number of states that have specific legislation now that mandates that paint recovery piece. And if we had that in Nebraska, for example, without kind of doing a lot more research into it, we would be able to eliminate that piece of the operation piece. And that latex paint recovery is a big component to that.
Any idea, or can you tell us, how many cubic yards of waste we're saving from the landfills by under the sink, or how many tons?
That's going to be a really tough number to come by. I can get you the total number of tons of material that go through the facility. I can get you that. I don't have that right in front of me today, but I can get you that. Overall, last year, there were 571,000 tons that went into Pheasant Point. So I'll get you that number.
Thank you.
Okay. So, as I was saying, if we could increase that $1.25 per ton landfill fee and get it set that it comes back directly to us to fund under the sink, and perhaps some of the education and outreach stuff, then we've killed two birds with one stone. We've basically checked off a couple of boxes in our solid waste management plan implementation. Any other question of that? And I wanted to just kind of give an update on the City of Omaha situation. They are right now in the process of finalizing their RFP document. Their particular city collection contract ends at the end of 2020, and so they need to put a new one in place. They don't have the option to renew the current contract. So what it appears is that they're going to move away from, on the left where you have the green bins and you have kind of an assortment of whatever trash cans and whatever for putting your trash in, and go to a cart system that is automated. The beauty of the cart system is that you basically have one operator, and you eliminate a lot of work comp issues and other stuff, because you now don't have people that have to be out of the truck handling unwieldy garbage cans and stuff. So they're probably going to start with a cart that looks kind of like this. There'll be a separate one for trash, a separate one for recyclables. Typically recycled carts are blue. And they're probably 96-gallon carts. They're on wheels. I can tell you, having done both systems, once you have a cart, you don't want to go back. So
As a citizen or as a person providing the
I've not been on the dump it into the truck
Oh, okay.
piece of it, but, from a citizen standpoint, these carts are absolutely wonderful.
Okay.
Um,
Do we have to buy those, or they gonna provide them?
They will be provided as part of the contract, it's my understanding.
Okay.
And so that's kind of where they're at right now. I would expect that RFP is gonna get pushed out on the street within the next couple of months, and then they'll evaluate different options. And one of the options is the yard waste piece, and they're still kind of toying with the options on that and how they want to handle that. And that will have an impact on the county's landfill, whichever way that goes. So we will see how that develops, and I'll keep you updated on that. Just a couple of numbers from Pheasant Point. The annual tonnage this past year, 2017, we were at about 571,000 tons. The average over the past 10 years is about 538. So we were up last year. There were a number of special event type projects that pushed that number up. Based on the way things are trending this year, we're going to be closer to the average, maybe a tad below that. I'd say probably about the average of about 535,000 tons. I threw this up here. This is a table, kind of an excerpted table, a portion of the table from the NDEQ solid waste study. These are the landfills which, including Pheasant Point, are in the closest proximity to Douglas County. And you can see, I point out the Butler County landfill. Where's my deal there? Butler County landfill out in by David City. That is where most of Sarpy County's solid waste is going now, as it gets funneled through the Sarpy County transfer station. But you can see that's a pretty ominous number. That's not that far out there, and they have to go vertically up there. They were denied expanding their footprint in that particular site, and so they have to go vertically, which creates kind of some other issues there. Plus the fact that it's still a 60-mile round trip, or 60-mile one-way trip out there. So, City of Lincoln, they just instituted a ban on cardboard. They want to try to reclaim that and keep it out of the landfill. So they're experimenting with a landfill ban on cardboard to try to, in part, extend the life of that landfill and so on. So those numbers are what they are. I can tell you that the 147 there is maybe a bit misleading. We in the department are hanging our hat on 127. So there's not quite 3 generations of us that will at this point. So and the difference between the 127 and 147, 127 is right now, if you put the stuff in there that you think you have room for, pack it down, that's what you have. If you allow for what's called secondary settlement, which is, okay, over time, there's going to be a certain amount of stuff that's going to degrade and it's going to settle some more, they think that potentially there's another 20 years worth of that. So, but you really don't know, because the composition of the landfill's changing. So I'm not real willing to stick my neck on 147. I'd rather use 127, which, okay, that's out there.
It's still enough.
So on that refreshing note, let's talk just a bit about planning and zoning. We do have a comprehensive development plan update that's in progress right now. We are finishing kind of a first phase of that, and RDG, our consultant on this, is going to be presenting to the Planning Commission next Wednesday on a couple of the key first elements of that. So once that gets through, we want to have that briefing with the Planning Commission. I can bring that to the county board and kind of show you where we're at with that, because these are kind of the overriding principles and some key elements that are being proposed as part of that plan update. The zoning board of adjustment, we still have 2 current vacancies. One is a regular position, one is the alternate position, so we'd like to get those filled as soon as possible. The only requirement is you have to really notice county for that. If there isn't anything in or out of city limits there. Planning commission will have 3 members, terms who expire at the end of May, and you'll have, if Karen hasn't pushed something out to you, she will be shortly, and they'll identify those members. And I'll make sure in the information that comes out that you know who's in city limits and out, so that we know what our requirements have to be there if you are looking to change a member there. Stormwater permit, we did have a new permit that essentially went into effect January 1. It's still actually being reviewed by the Department of Environmental Quality. It's a little different permit. It doesn't have as many monitoring requirements to it, and we're just waiting to see if they have any comments on our initial submittal. So that's kind of in progress. Something you may see before you in the coming weeks is an interlocal agreement for this Lower Platte weed management area. Mike Reed and County Attorney are continuing in some negotiations. Lancaster County is having a little bit of angst with it because they're wanting another provision in it. It seems like all the other players are on board with it, but Lancaster's having a few issues with it. So we'll see what that is, and then my instructions to Mike was, we may have to just at some point just kind of cut bait and we just move on without Lancaster or whatever. So we'll see where that goes. From a landscape standpoint, there are a couple things at the health center that are on the front burner, continuing with some of the sustainable landscape initiative and a front entrance landscaping plan. One of the things that we're trying to do there is to kind of mesh some improved aesthetics and some things there that will help Jean and her crew out there sell the facility, and also take advantage of the fact that we have some sustainability elements there that will be unique to this property, that will be a marketing advantage for those folks who that type of thing is important to them. But we want to be able to do that with an improved aesthetic. So in terms of the areas that we're looking at, over here you can see down here in the corner, 42nd and Woolworth, some potential improvements, some concept improvements of pulling the sidewalk away from 42nd Street. Virtually no one walks on this sidewalk. You've got 35, 40 mile per hour cars whizzing by you. This is a terrible thing to try to maintain. So pulling that sidewalk in allows the sidewalk to be a safer place to walk, allows us to do better landscaping along here. Still the potential to add a sign down here to replace the one that just was in bad shape and needed to be removed. And some other circulation things in here, potentially a future pavilion here that provides more like a park-like setting, a better connection to the health center itself so that people can get up here and have benches, picnic tables, things like that, so they can enjoy this green space. A lot more improvements designed in this particular area. We've got the new sign, entrance sign right here. We've removed some of the trees here for better visibility, and we're looking to enhance the overall appeal here. We've added a set of stairs right here coming off to better connect the upper and the lower landscape there, and we'll continue to make some improvements there. One thing you'll see in this entire front entrance area is a lot more dramatic color and textures and things that will enhance the overall aesthetic appeal at that particular area. Over here on the right in the Kavanaugh area, we have I believe it's the lone remaining green ash on the property. We're going to have to address that, and the question is whether we want to address it now or whether we want to try to keep it going for a number of years. So we'll kind of deal with that. Some challenges here with along the street out here with utilities, which may always be there. So we have to kind of work that into the design as well.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Kent is an amazing environmentalist given the chance, and that's what he'd studied and everything. And he was at first kind of given a blank slate here and was coming up with quite an arboretum and really quite a neat thing. But Gene had concerns that it wasn't inviting enough for potential patients, family members, whatever. And I just want to thank Kent for he has really been, I think, trying to accommodate what Gene wants there, trying to balance that with his love of environmental stuff. So I appreciate the direction you're going on this.
I too. The area just to the east of 42nd Street, are you going to create a little bit of a shallow dip there for water collection?
We will try to do as many stormwater related things here as possible. The elevations don't work as well for us here. One of the things that if we did a pavilion out here, we would certainly capture the water off the roof of that and use it to irrigate with. And we're looking at that in other areas as well. So yeah, we'll do as much as we possibly can.
See, I've often thought that each area where we have a parkway, if you were to recess it a little bit instead of curving it this way,
Sure.
we could probably solve most of our water runoff problems for the sewer separation.
There are always some utility issues that you've got to deal with in those situations. That's probably the biggest concern about trying to locate some of
Chop them out.
those like that.
They'll come back and relocate them.
There you go.
So turning it into a parking lot, I guess, is out of the question.
Well, we could use a little more parking.
Not very green.
So to Commissioner Judah's point, had a good meeting with Jean and her assistant last Wednesday, and that's I want to make sure that I have a good feel for where she's coming from a marketing standpoint. And the thing that I've pushed to her is that this is going to be a long-term care facility that can use sustainable landscaping techniques to help promote that sustainability, resiliency, the same types of things that at least from the outside looking in, this is what we're trying to, we're trying to create a healthy environment here. So can we take elements of the landscape and use that to market the facility? I mean, there are people that are going to want that type of an amenity, and we want to be able to, as I think as Commissioner Duda indicated, we want to try to marry the marketability from a visual standpoint with the marketability from a sustainability standpoint. And I'm convinced we can do that, and I get the feeling that Gene feels we can do that. We just got to be able to make it happen. So there will be some changes up here in the front, and we want to make sure that from a safety and security standpoint, we address that piece of it as well. So I think there's some cool things that you'll see out here, some that we will need a little bit of money for, and we'll look for grant funding and things. Almost all of the trees in the Arboretum were grant funded, and we utilize smaller trees to start with so that you establish more quickly and so on. So a number of different things going on there.
I would just ask that before you finalize any kind of a plan, that you talk to me so I can get in advance, because I've always had some thoughts about, I didn't really think, even though it's sustainable, the look when you drive by, that corner wasn't always the best with the landscaping that was there.
Right.
And I think if you really want to attract more residents, then that look and how it looks is really going to be important. I mean, I think, personally, my opinion is that the aesthetics are going to outweigh the sustainability features. I mean, if you're somebody looking to put your resident,
Right.
your family in a place, how it looks, to me, is going to be more important than the sustainability features. Not that it's not important. I'm not saying it's not important. I just think that it's really important how it looks when you drive by it. So if you would let me know what your plans are going to be before they are already implemented, I'd like to get a heads up on that.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the emotional
Sure.
context
Mhm.
is very important. You're right.
Yes, I made the same commitment to Jean that she needs to be fully on board with what that plan is gonna be.
Right,
To make
so I'd like to be
changes.
part of
So,
that process too.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Shifting gears to the west campus, the Fitzgerald facility, obviously we've got construction stuff going on now. And as we can get to the conclusion of that construction, there'll be opportunities out on this campus to be able to do some additional things with landscaping. You know, this whole set of trees right here is now gone. They needed to go. They were in bad shape, and a number of these other trees needed to go as well. So, but there'll be 2 big parking lots out here in this area, and opportunities to be able to do some things with stormwater. There's a couple of big stormwater features that are already as part of the design, but there'll be opportunities there too. And trying to do things sustainably, but aesthetically pleasing is going to be a goal.
Are we going to use permeable pavers in the parking lot?
I believe not on the main parking lots. I think that part of the issue there would be the fact that you've got geothermal stuff that's happening under the parking lots there. I believe the courtyard that's back here takes into consideration permeable paving and things there. So there'll be other opportunities there, I think, down the road. So that's all I have. Happy to entertain any questions that you have.
Questions, anybody? I'm very pleased with what I see.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, looks good.
No one has questions, is there any other business?
Should we sandwich?
Seeing there's no other business,
He started with the whole sandwich, so he got halfway.
that is a big sandwich.
I know.
I move we adjourn.
That's a half?
That's half.